Thanks everybody for coming to this webinar on news literacy here at the Daniel Boone Regional Library. Um, I hope everyone is enjoying this beautiful warm fall evening. My name is Seth Smith and I'm a public services librarian here at DBRL. I've been working on news literacy projects for several years now. Uh, so I wanted to give you a little bit of background on our news literacy initiative here at the Daniel Boone Regional Library. In the summer of 2019, we attended a symposium on news literacy called Friend of the Facts at the University of Missouri Reynolds School of Journalism. Fast forward to May of 2020, and the Daniel Boone Regional Library System received an Institute of Museum and Library Services grant through the Missouri State Library to initiate a year-long project helping spread news literacy throughout our two-county system. So there are two resource partners with this grant. IREX is one of them, and they are the acronym for the International Research and Exchanges Board, and it's based out of Washington, D.C., as well as the Reynolds Journalism Institute from the University of Missouri. IREX is a leader in providing media literacy curriculum worldwide through its Learn to Discern, or L2D, educational initiatives. The L2D curriculum was first introduced in the Ukraine to combat propaganda and misinformation that was being spread throughout the country in the early part of the 2010s. I want to give many kudos to IREX for their great assistance with this presentation and project, as well as all kinds of great assistance they've given us so far with our grant project. So the Reynolds Journalism Institute is also heavily involved in this grant. They're providing guidance through its wide network of journalists and scholars working on current news literacy projects throughout the nation. And I want to give a shout out to Kathy Kiley from the Reynolds Journalism Institute for being instrumental in getting this news literacy project started here at the library. So I also want to mention that we will be mailing attendees a free media literacy book. This is the book right here. It's True or False, Fake News, a CIA Analyst Guide to Spotting Fake News by Cindy L. Otis. This is a great book about news literacy, brand new, published in 2020. We all have really liked it on the grant team. It comes highly recommended. So basically what I'm going to do at the end of the presentation is give everyone my email address, and you'll send your email to, you can send an email to me at my email address, and I will then, and if you be sure to include your mailing address, and we can mail you a free copy of the book. I know with the COVID times, it has been much harder to disperse information here at the library, but we're doing the best we can. One of the things I also wanted to point out is this presentation was actually supposed to be in person. We were going to have a lot of educational initiatives throughout our service area here at the Daniel Boone Regional Library. Everything is now online. We're just doing this as a webinar basis, but we're really hoping to have a lot more of these presentations in the future. So at this point, what I'm going to do is share my screen and give a small presentation about our current news landscape and strategies on how to combat misinformation in the news and to help you with your news literacy. Also, I want to mention, please feel free to send any questions that you can think of during the presentation into our chat feature. And you can do that at the end as well, or you can send me an email at the end as well if you'd like, if you have any further questions. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we will start the presentation. So this is the information landscape that we're living in today. We live in a media-saturated world where media and information consumption is not only a habit for most people, it is almost impossible to avoid. Most of us spend most of our waking hours staring at screens, and young children, youth, and adults spend much of their waking hours interacting with media. So, as you can see from the slide, kindergartners are exposed to 70 media messages every day. Teenagers spend at least 9 hours per day with media. And I know for my 14-year-old, that can actually be more than that. Adults spend 11 hours per day interacting with media. So it is a media-saturated landscape. Also, according to a Pew Research study released in 2020, 48% of adults under 30 actually get their news via social media. And news generated from Twitter and Facebook have greatly muddied the waters in the struggle for media and news literacy this election season. One problem, and one of the biggest problems right now, are called fake troll accounts. A Russian-based organization called the Internet Research Agency, or IRA, has set up thousands of these accounts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Over the last decade, these troll accounts have become far more tricky to spot and are often used to spread erroneous news reports or fake news. More clicks equals more money, of course. Facebook draws traffic to websites which earn money via Google AdSense or other internet advertising services. Google AdSense is one of the most pernicious things on the internet. And one of the reasons that Facebook has established algorithms is that they appeal not only to the bubble that one exists in, but they also target ads based on one's buying preferences and interests. This is where Google AdSense really makes a tremendous amount of money on social media. Algorithms don't only curate and narrow the scope of what we see on social media. They do the same for just about everything we do online. Our Googling, other types of web searches, even our cell phone apps as well. What your online search turns up depends on your past search history and what you've clicked on, as well as your overall digital habits. Search algorithms take into account all the digital exhaust that our online activities leave behind and present us with something that they predict we will want to see. Additionally, the advertising you see above or below your search results depends on what an algorithm believes you want. So YouTube is a great example of this. Several experiments in 2018 demonstrated a problem that the New York Times called the nexus of artificial intelligence and Google's business model. And as many of you probably know, YouTube is owned by Google. Google is an advertising broker selling out attention to companies that will pay for it. And the longer people stay on YouTube, the more money Google makes. Until researchers actually uncovered this pattern, YouTube's algorithms tended to keep people's attention by offering them more and more extreme content than what they started with. So you should remain very cautious in your internet searches, not only because of Google AdSense, because of all these algorithms that are working behind the scenes. So wildly inaccurate or sensational news has always been with us. The New York Journal was one of the many metro dailies published in the New York area in the late 1800s and was a really good example of yellow journalism of the day. So the Maine was actually likely destroyed by an internal coal fire and not by a Spanish mine. And the Spanish government were even willing to put the matter up for arbitration. But for many Americans, this was the final straw, and the news stories really pushed for severe consequences and intervention. This news story was actually the catalyst for the start of the Spanish-American War. And it was proved again and again that the Maine was actually destroyed by a coal fire. It was never proven that it was destroyed by a Spanish mine. So the problem these days is that media can easily be manipulated, and in the end, photo manipulation right now is rampant. So this Time magazine cover was dispersed, the one on the right, was dispersed on social media as evidence that global warming was a media-generated hoax, because just 40 years ago, Time magazine had published a similar title about the coming ice age. As you can see, though, from its faded look, this was actually, the one on the right was actually a Photoshop fake. The one on the left was a legitimate cover. So here's a more recent example of how a video was manipulated to show that Biden was asleep during a television interview. So factcheck.org, which is the fact-checking site that I'll talk about a little bit more later on, it actually debunked it, as well as a bunch of other ones. Snopes is another example of a site that debunked that this actually happened. The video actually was spliced. The journalist supposedly interviewing Biden was actually footage from an interview with Harry Belafonte from 2011. He'd actually fallen asleep during this interview. And so Harry Belafonte had fallen asleep during the interview with this particular journalist. Biden is actually just pausing momentarily to take a look at his notes. So Biden was never interviewed by this particular journalist on the left. It is a strictly manipulated video. Also, false attribution is epidemic as well. This claim that Donald Trump said, if I were to run, I'd run as a Republican. They're the dumbest group of voters in the country. They believe anything on Fox News. I could lie and they'd still eat it up. I bet my numbers would be terrific. Well, that actually never appeared in People magazine, nor was it ever uttered by President Trump, but it spread like wildfire across social media the last 5 years and is still being shared as a true, quote unquote, true story. So this hot mess of a site is where all the pathologies of the digital age are coming together. What is most unfortunate about this website, which is part of a suite of satirical sites that are posted under the umbrella of America's last line of defense, many of the articles are reposted as fact on social media. Even though the heading has the incredibly ridiculous subheadings of for satire, ridicule, and mockery, it's obviously satire. In fact, there are many, many disclaimers in the about pages on these sites. You will find that many of these articles are shared thousands, if not millions of times through social media. In fact, the article that says California's governor says all households earning over $30,000 must take in a refugee has been posted 18,000 times through Facebook, even though it is completely satire. So what are some of the pitfalls of social media and getting your news from Facebook? Well, these global statistics illustrate the world that we live in today. It's an information-saturated world. TikTok is downloaded more than any other app now. We send 12 million texts a day, watch over 4 million videos, conduct almost 4 million Google searches. It's just incredible how much we use the internet every day. And here are some statistics. In 2017, 3.8 billion people had access to the internet. That's 47% of the population of the Earth. And that 12% increased from the year before. And it's even grown exponentially since then. So at this rate, most of the world will be online in less than a decade. 90% of the data in the world today has been created in the last 2 years alone. And our current output of data is roughly 2.5 quintillion bytes a day. So as a whole, the internet population includes, at this point, over 3.7 billion people. Furthermore, some studies have demonstrated that social media can make you feel bad. Spending a lot of time on social media can have a negative impact on the emotional well-being of people. For example, one study in the US found that over 1 in 4 young adults who spend about an hour per day on social media have high indicators of depression. We also know that 1 hour a day is a serious underestimate of the amount of time that most young adults spend on social media. So in 2009, only 9% of 16 to 25-year-olds disagreed with the statement that life is really worth living, but that has now risen to 18%. A similar amount agreed that social media makes them feel inadequate, and more than half, 57%, think social media creates overwhelming pressure to succeed. And the source for this is actually a study by the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine. In another study, the number of young people in the UK who say they do not believe that life is worth living has doubled in the last decade amid a sense of overwhelming pressure from social media, which is driving feelings of inadequacy, research suggests. Youth happiness levels have fallen most sharply over the last decade in respect to relationships with friends and emotional health, the survey found, while satisfaction with issues like money and accommodation have remained steady. There are other reasons digital media is difficult for the human brain. Today, with the 24/7 news cycle, along with commercial, entertainment, and user-generated content, they all compete for our attention and clicks. Clicking on a link not only means that that link has captured your attention, but potentially also a great deal of advertising revenue. So this is one of the reasons that even credible sources are now designing headlines to provoke strong emotions like clickbait, manipulative headlines that provoke your curiosity to get more clicks. Think for a moment how much advertising you see on Facebook. It actually exists in order to make money, and it makes its money when users see advertising. So this company does not have your best interests in heart. Basically, what they're trying to do is sell your data to advertisers. Also, another problem is a great majority of Americans who now spend time on social media exist in what is called a filter bubble. This is due to the algorithms that we were talking about before. And these algorithms are continually refining whose posts we see, what types of content we're exposed to. Unless we make a conscious decision to seek out new types of content and perspectives, other than those we agree with, we can find ourselves trapped without knowing it in a virtual community of only like-minded people. So, what is the next step? It's basically, we want to try to figure out what's valid news on our own. And that's not as easy as you think. So we have this great poster from the International Federation of Library Association and Institutions. I'll talk a little bit more about this at the end of the presentation. We can also send you this poster if you want it as a PDF, but this is where we're getting these little snippets of ideas of how to spot misinformation on your own. First of all, consider the source. Click away from the story to investigate the site, its mission, and its contact info. So consider this satirical news story. Solar panels drain the sun's energy. So this article looks somewhat legitimate, but it is from a notorious satirical site called the National Reporter. So if something like this gets posted on social media but doesn't look credible, click beyond to see the source or the about page. The disclaimer for the National Reporter says, "The National Reporter is a news and political satire," and this is quoting from the disclaimer, "is a news and political satire web publication, which may or may not use real names, often semi-real or in mostly fictitious ways. All news articles contained within National Reporter are fiction. Sadly, there are at least 1,800 comments on this article from people believing that the news story is actually true. Read beyond. Headlines can be outrageous in an effort to get clicks. So what's the whole story? Even legitimate news sources will oftentimes resort to a form of clickbait. So you see this headline, it says, Ebola in the air, a nightmare that could happen. Well, reading further on this CNN story, beyond the headline, one finds this type of viral hemorrhagic fever, like Ebola, has never been associated with respiratory spread, and the chances were infinitesimal or even impossible that it could mutate in this way. Also, check out the fact that Google AdSense is popping up all over many of these pages. Google AdSense is everywhere. So be sure to read beyond the headlines. Clickbait is another example of headlines that can manipulate you into clicking on something that oftentimes leads you to completely unrelated pages, sometimes that are filled with viral content or further misleading information. This is a great example of what clickbait looks like. It's usually found at the bottom of the page and features celebrities or outrageous news stories. And sometimes if you click on clickbait, the news story that you think you're getting is completely different from what you get. And it oftentimes will take you to something that has, one of the problems with clickbait is it will take you to something that has viral content. So don't click on clickbait. It's a dangerous place to go. Check the author. What is their byline? Are they credible or real? So this news story, Ocasio-Cortez proposes nationwide motorcycle ban, was one of the most shared fake news stories of the last few years, and is from a satire site called Tater's Gonna Tate. The author, Phyllis Gunnington, has no visible byline and writes similarly incredible and outlandish stories for this particular website, including one that's entitled RuPaul to be featured in new Dick Van Dyke show. Right next to his byline are nonsensical tags. I don't know if you can see it on here, but it says, dream come true for you, fan fiction and hot potato. This person is obviously not a real author and not writing for a credible news source. But unfortunately, this was shared over 1.4 million times. So also, supporting sources are very important. Click on those links. Determine if the info given actually supports the story. For instance, is it peer-reviewed? So peer review, known as refereeing in some academic fields, is a process of subjecting an author's scholarly work or ideas to the scrutiny of others who are experts in the field. It is used primarily by editors and publishers to select and screen submitted manuscripts that are worthy of publication. The peer review process is aimed at getting authors to meet the standards of their discipline. Publications that have not undergone peer review are likely to be regarded with suspicion by scholars and professionals in many fields. So this particular article was published claiming that the SARS-CoV-2 genome was probably manufactured, and the article was spread through social media. So it's basically saying that it was most likely manufactured in a laboratory and not somehow produced through interaction with wild animals, which most scientists now think is what happened. It was not published in a scientific journal and was never peer reviewed, but it did spread through social media quite rapidly several months ago. Also, check the date of publication. Reposting old news stories doesn't mean they're relevant to current news and events, and really reposting old news stories is actually a form of spreading erroneous news. So there's one media outlet that's really working hard to flag old news content, and that's the Guardian newspaper. Basically, anything that is older than a month, they flag with this yellow flag. It's on all the articles. In fact, this article about them flagging old news on social media has the flag. This article is more than 1 year old. I believe they're one of the only places that are actually doing this, but it's a good start because old news articles, sometimes as old as 10 years, are often reshared on Facebook or Twitter as new news. And it's very misleading to users. It's one of the more pernicious problems with social media at this point. Also, is it a joke? If it's too outlandish, it might be satire. So we talked about a lot of satire already. There are many satire sites out there now. Some of them couch a lot of the news articles as thinly veiled true stories that could possibly be believable. However, the old standby, The Onion, is reliable in its hilarious, unbelievable content, although they have been kind of surpassed recently with real news stories. But this is a great example of something The Onion posted. SeaWorld employees place orcas in plastic bags of water while cleaning tanks. You know, this is what we do. Like if you have some goldfish, you'll put them in plastic bags. Someone reposted this as true content and said, this is why SeaWorld needs to go. This happens a lot. And it doesn't just happen with The Onion, it happens with a lot of satirical sites that I've been talking about earlier as well. But if it's satire, if it seems pretty unbelievable, check it out. It probably is an untrue news story. So check your biases. Consider if your own beliefs could affect your judgment. And I'm prey to this as well. I have all kinds of biases that I hold in my life. And confirmation bias is the tendency people have toward embracing information that supports their beliefs and rejecting information that contradicts them. So this is the same type of bias that really runs the filter bubble algorithms on Facebook and other social media sites that we've talked about. It's something that we need to be consciously aware of. If we're in these filter bubbles, we're mainly getting news that reinforces our viewpoints and not really letting those other viewpoints take hold that might have some validity. So this is a really interesting resource. It's called Media Bias Chart, and it's published by an entity called MediaBiasChart.com. So it actually examines key English language publications throughout the world, and it rates them according to their political orientation, their interpretation of the news, whether it contains propaganda or misleading information, whether opinion is fair, if it is an opinion paper, whether it's fair and persuasive. So you can actually download a free chart on their PDF chart on their site. You go to MediaBiasChart.com. It's a really fascinating place to go, and there's a lot of really interesting information there. So we're going to get local here even further. So one of our partners in our news literacy grant, the Reynolds Journalism Institute, published this fascinating chart regarding news trustworthiness back in 2017. And so this chart was assembled using data from surveys given to the general public about how much they trusted specific news sources. It's a really, really interesting project. You can go view this at www.rjonline.org. And a lot of these links as well, we can send to you if you do send me, if you are interested in one of these books, one of the free books, I can send you some of these links as well through email. Also, ask the experts. Ask a librarian or consult a fact-checking site. So I'm going to put in a little plug for librarians. One of the reasons we're doing this project, this news literacy project, is we feel like we're on the forefront of helping people sift through all the information that's out there and that comes through. We also feel like we're really on the front lines of democracy, and one of the really good reasons that reference librarians do their jobs is they really want people to get good information. So this is a picture of a couple of reference librarians at the Seattle Public Library. We're always here to help. One of the reasons that libraries are trying to survive and keep going during this pandemic is we feel very strongly that we are one of the main sources of information for people right now. So librarians can always help with any of your information needs, and if you're trying to find good quality information out there. So finally, this poster is published by the International Association of Library Associations and Institutions and is freely available as a PDF on their website. So we found it to be a very useful resource for quick reference for staff, students, and patrons. It's a really handy PDF, and we'd be glad to send you one of these as well. We have several that are hanging up in our staff areas, and we point people to these, this poster. It's a very helpful tool. So at this point, I'm going to share an incredible video that shows you a little bit about what the future of technology might be and what we might be in for as far as news media manipulation. So if you hold on for just a second, I'm going to go ahead and share this video.
He's there, sir. On Scariff.
The original plans for this station are kept there, are they not?
Charmed to the last.
I will tell him that his patience with your misadventures has been rewarded with a weapon that will bring a swift end to the rebellion. I will tell him that his patience with your misadventures has been rewarded with a weapon that will bring a swift end to the rebellion.
So this is actually an amazing video, and to me it is one of the real examples of how and where manipulation might go as far as what news media might look like in the future. So the Star Wars franchise brought back the great British actor Peter Cushing. They brought him into Rogue One using CGI. This digital replica was almost indiscernible from the real Peter Cushing, who actually died in 1994. And it's a really good example of how difficult it can be now to parse technology from reality. And in the future, fake profiles, even fake people, or artificial intelligence has become even more believable. And I don't know, it's kind of scary to me. It could possibly be more, possibly be used to create additional misleading news stories, or there's a lot of potential for fakery out there at this point. So at this point, I'd like to take the opportunity to take any more questions from folks if you want to send them through chat. And I want to put another plug in for our True or False, a CIA Analyst's Guide to Spotting Fake News. This is a free book. We are glad to send you a copy of it. We've all really enjoyed it here. It's actually something that came through, highly recommended to the library. So you can send it to my email address at smith@dbrl.org. Please include your full address in your email to me. This is while supplies last. We're going to be doing more of these presentations, and hopefully we'll have some in-person presentations in the future. It all depends on how the virus goes. As you know, all that is really up in the air for now. So thanks so much to everyone who have come to this webinar. Looks like we do have a few chat messages here. Let me see what we've got. Oh yeah, for sure. Take a moment to fill out the survey at the end of the program. The link will be emailed to you in a follow-up tomorrow. So I also wanted to mention there's one other thing that that we really excited about. The grant has allowed us to put together some modules for training staff in news literacy, and I think a lot of the staff at the Daniel Boone Regional Library will be a lot better versed in issues surrounding news literacy as we move forward into this pretty uncharted territory in this kind of an uncharted decade in terms of what's going on with the news. Diana, thanks so much for your comment, and we really appreciate you attending. We're trying to spread our programming out quite a bit through webinars. That's the only option we have right now, so we're really glad to be doing programming at this point. It's been a bit of a dry spell for us, so we're glad to get out and offer these kinds of things. Well, if there are no other questions through chat, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Again, I want to thank everybody for coming, and please send me your to my email. I want to give my email out one more time. Let me just share my screen here. So it's smith@dbrl.org. If you want the free book, send me your full mailing address and your name, and we can send you a book. We're glad to do that. They're absolutely free, and I think you'll get a lot out of it. So thanks so much for everybody attending, and hopefully we'll maybe see you at our next webinar.